Hi everyone, we started our meeting. You're now on video. Everything you say is being recorded, so stop talking trash. We are going to call this meeting to order. Is anyone signed up to speak? Emily? Thank you. I would love to approve the minutes from our March 24th work session. You have a chance to read?
I did, and I would also like to.
Great, let's vote.
We approve. Okay.
Noted.
Noted. Emily, I know you're not a formal member of this committee, but you approve as well?
I'm really excited about them.
Great, so we are going to hop into it. We have three big items tonight. One is to talk about science curriculum, the review of data and planning for instructional rounds and listening circles, sort of like what we did with middle school ELA. Then we're going to talk about instructional minutes based on our conversation last time where we sort of were talking about to what degree science can be taught or to what degree could like digital skills like typing be included based on the minutes in our school day and how instructional minutes are currently distributed. And then we have some special guests with principal perspective on the new EL curriculum. That was something else that was raised around how it's going. We've heard some feedback from teachers and would also love to hear from administrators. And it sounds like we might even have a couple of exciting guests.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know. It's a surprise. So what I'd like to do is to start off with around 20 minutes for science curriculum. You should operate under the assumption that we've reviewed the information that you sent, but maybe just like a quick, as a reminder, we did this, this, and this.
I
And
did
then
review, I had it all, I did all my homework. I'm good.
me too.
All right.
Does that sound good? So is Mary, Lynn, or do you want to come up and join us?
It's both of us.
Yeah.
Team.
Hi, so
You let me know when you want it.
absolutely, yeah, let's go. Let's not waste a minute. I'm just gonna pull up my calendar too to make sure for dates. All right, so we're gonna talk about science curriculum. The first thing we're gonna talk about is learning walks. So this is something we could do over email if you want to just email me directly times that work for you and you're given you are volunteers and you have lots that you're balancing. Specific dates or days that would be better than others, then I'll work with Principal Tomasic to find a good time. One day that we held is, let's see here.
I think given that
May 7th. So that's just a placeholder because in the past, sometimes we've picked dates and life happens and it doesn't end up being a great date for everybody. So if you just give me some proposed dates, we can do that. Then the other opportunity,
I think if you could send us an email.
Yeah.
Ask about it, and that way we can all chime in. And I think that
Great.
probably if you could say, hey, here's 3 potential dates, which one works the best? I think that would lead to less back and forth.
perfect. I'll do that.
Thanks.
And then one example of science inquiry and action and going through a cycle is the celebration of learning at Caroline Elementary School, and that's going to be in June. So I'm going to send you an invite for that just to hold it so you know what happens. It's community-wide, caregivers are invited. It typically has hundreds of people attending. So
And that's what I'm for.
yeah. So that's, I just want to give you context when it hits. All right. And then also for science, so learning conferences and circles. So one practice we've used to get input on really great reading and magnetic reading
And Fontes and Canal.
and Fontes and Canal, that we got really great data was listening conferences. So I'll start that in May. And that's when I sit in the building and people schedule individual appointments with me. or they just stop by. It's an office hour format, and I collect them with their experiences teaching science right now. What are some needs? What do they appreciate? What do they want more of, less of? And that, we do with certain content areas based on that 5-year cycle. That's coming up, and I can share out that information in June. But I think that I'm really excited for those. I really learn a lot. And then for the listening circle during PLC, there was some conversation on the board. It's one, I've had a couple of teachers approach me that they really appreciate the opportunity, but this time of year is also really full at the end of the year. So I can throw out sometimes. Typically, we've done it on a PLC day, and right now there's just a lot going on in the spring, as you all know as parents, with activities. So I would suggest that fall date might be more fruitful, but if you want me to throw out a couple dates in the spring, I can do that too.
Thanks for sharing that. I'd love to, Catherine, does that resonate with what you're, sorry.
That we're doing drop-in, seeking feedback in buildings as opposed to pulling people out. Yeah. Wait, is that right?
Or you meant should be not do something.
I meant, yeah, I should have meant, is it?
Oh, there's never a great time. The timing will always be perfect for some people and really hard for other people.
I'd love them to propose that we work for it, worst case scenario is no one comes. And then we can all hang out, which will be fun. And also, and I also think in the last first listening circle, I think probably 6 of us all took notes on what people were saying, confidentially, but in Google Docs. And so I feel like that could be another opportunity, right? Just to share if people wanted to add to a Google Doc perspective.
Great. I'm curious though, we've talked so often about the listening circles and how impactful they are for us. But as I hear you say that, and I'm wondering, do teachers feel comfortable always? Is there any sense of they should be showing up, members from the board are going to be there, or even that you're going to be there? Are we putting teachers on the spot to some extent? Ones that feel a sense of they know they don't, it's not a requirement, but that's different from feeling.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know, I'm just curious.
I don't feel like I can answer that with integrity, but Captain, maybe you I feel like people will be more direct with you.
So in the ones that we've been involved in, is some of them have been ITA organized, some of them have been district organized. So I can only speak to the ITA ones in that I haven't heard that as expressed as a concern. That people have seemed to show their comfort with their feet by showing up. We've had robust rooms full of people of all different levels of teaching experience in the district. So I think the people who are uncomfortable, who would be uncomfortable in that setting, probably just aren't showing up, rather than saying we should have a different format.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that they feel comfortable just not showing up.
Heard it, and they, no one. Oh, yeah, I think everyone feels.
I don't want to feel, when something says that it's
The only time that I've heard concern is our PLC is doing this really, really important thing on that day, and I want to be in 2 places at once. And we've been well, you already know the questions, so write your answers to the questions, and we'll make sure that they get read.
Okay.
Yes, no, it's good. It's a good question. I mean, one of the things that when we worked with John Antonin, we really held close for the use of professional learning communities was that what happens at that time changes what happens on the student's desk the next day.
Yeah.
And so I do think teachers will give us that feedback. And if we leverage that time to really impact what happens for kids the next day. That's pretty important for me. That's what I'm listening for.
With, I was gonna say, let's talk.
Let's talk data.
All right. So this is just for people who are watching. This is up and this is links to both some resources and then data, aggregated data, disaggregated data for your review. And I think what we would like to start is what questions do you have? What do you see in the data as you review it? You want to add anything when we follow these?
And just if you have any questions or clarifications about what the data is showing or how it's presented.
Thank you so much for sending it in. It's great to be able to go through. Adam, you said you had some.
Well, no, I said I printed it all out. But actually, I have a couple of questions, but I think I might know the answers to them, but it might be just worth saying them out loud. Just for other people that aren't looking at these things. So I just noticed just two observations that Science 5, I just noticed that a lot of public schools seem to go up, like schools went up about 10 points. And we were already outperforming, but we didn't go up 10 points. I was just kind of wondering, like, is that because of some sort of a change, or like why did the nation seem to have a big uptick and we kind of stayed the same? And then my second question was about the Regents Living environmental scores. I was just curious about why those seem to go down so much for ICSD, and that I'm guessing I won't answer the question. I think I know the answer, but I'm just
No, that's really great. So it's a great. Those are both great questions. So let's start with the living environment. So the Regents change. So that's why if you're looking at that slide on.
I was just going to get that first link open up.
First one?
Yeah. Yeah. And then
Second.
I don't think it was that.
this is the one.
Yeah.
So we're gonna see the third row. It just has one dot because it was one data point. It was the first year of the region. And so essentially, when that region's changed in June 2025, the row above the second row denotes that is just students who did not pass it the first time and had to retake it. So it's a selected group of students being compared against students who weren't necessarily retaking it. In our district, they were retaking it, so they did not pass the year before, and then they had the opportunity to retake that exam. The exam changed, but because they took the original course with the original standards prior to the changing of the next generation science, they took the old test. So it's a small group of students retaking these.
That's the second box down the top of that.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it goes, it's like a 23 students took that second row, that living environment in
Okay.
2025 versus over 100 in previous years.
Okay. So it's kind of an anomaly in the data. Not that
Yeah.
relevant. Okay. And then the other one's
yeah.
about Science 5.
Yeah, and just to clarify on the Science 5, which is the first slide, that is, I should have put that in the title. It's all New York State public schools. So that comparison is in New York as a New York comparison, not a national comparison.
Yes.
We're looking at that. And I would say, we don't right now, we don't have an explanation for, why for that lack of change in our own data, other than like perhaps we were better prepared than than other districts when that change happened. We had done some considerable prep work in terms of like getting out to teachers what the new test format looked like. We had some support from BOCES that year and Sten Anderson to help prepare for the lab. So kind of like perhaps we were better prepared than our peers, and they caught up to us. I mean, that's one potential explanation, but
That makes sense. And then okay,
Yeah.
so those were two just anomalous data points, but I think like if we were gonna summarize the data points, like it looks like we have good, just not to just pick on these two little tiny things. that we had some very good science scores, especially like across AP tests where it looked like we were outperforming the normative group that we were comparing our school to across a lot of different tests, and also across other grades, and science scores seem to be like exceeding New York State's average, seem to be the rule, and the things that I was just calling out were just kind of exceptions, so I didn't want to make it seem like that represented everything. Those are just my questions.
Yeah.
And am I correctly adding on what Adam said, right? Like when you look at all students, if high performance. If I'm correct, we're also seeing a pretty big discrepancy with economically disadvantaged versus not, right? Like in the fifth grade, I think 25% proficient for economically disadvantaged versus almost 80% for.
So
is that
That
accurate?
the 25% is for all public schools. We're at 32%.
Okay.
So the very top row is, so again, we can do better. We're at 32% just because we're outperforming the state average by 7%. We're still going to strive to do better, but that is a cohort that is one specific cohort where we're not outperforming by, the 22 percentage points that you see for all students.
And so
When all of them are averaged together.
And I think to your point, Jacob, that that the discrepancy we see and the difference in performance we see between our economically disadvantaged students and not economically disadvantaged is consistent with what we're seeing in other subject areas. So in ELA and math, right? So our commitment to equity is something we are still striving for, right? We are not yet having equitable outcomes for all groups of students. I'd say overall we have strong performance, but that variability between groups exists and is persistent.
And do you have, okay, it looks like, I'm just trying to do my calculation, so it's around a 46% discrepancy, does that sound right?
Between our economically disadvantaged and our economically not disadvantaged students, correct, that's about right. Just looking here.
Oh,
Here.
great. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Still,
Just didn't want to.
I mean, this is not an excuse, it's just a reality. That discrepancy exists at the state level, at the national level, and across pretty much all subject areas.
and slightly less here, but not
Yes.
not compellingly great.
Correct,
Yes.
correct, yes.
And then I was also curious about the rising enrollment in AP classes. So it looked like that, or of taking AP exams. I just would love to know. Personally, I'm a big fan of just like opening access to more AP classes and for more students, and so I was really delighted to see that and love to know a little bit more about them.
Yeah.
If I'm correctly analyzing.
They're specific, so I'll say these out loud. Specifically, AP Physics and AP Biology have an increase, a steady trajectory. And so you'll see some movement when you hear about, for example, class sizes and those, and IHS scheduling having to be nimble as students request courses, and making accommodations for students, voting with their feet essentially for what they want, and they want it. I mean, it's a great problem. They're absolutely right. We have more students requesting AP science courses right now. When you look at the AP Physics, that's interesting as well. We were discussing the difference between AP Physics and the Regents Physics course, and more students requesting the AP Physics versus taking the Regents Physics.
Right, you'll notice like our the number of students taking the physics exam for Regents has really declined to almost no students. The instruction has really in physics really shifted more to striving for that higher level testing.
Because students don't require.
Right, because students that are taking the physics Regents have already fulfilled that graduation requirement with the living environment. All ninth grade students take living environment at the high school. and take that regent so that fulfills the graduation requirement in terms of assessment for science.
Living environment is,
Biology.
sorry,
Yeah,
titles change.
yeah, exactly. And that's, and you, yes,
Okay.
exactly, yeah.
And I would just love to hear, so like, so then when, I know we all have our like own questions and thoughts on data, what are your takeaways on data in terms of like, what are strengths, what are areas of growth, and what implications are there then for like work in science curriculum in your perspective?
So when we looked at this, some of this data at the beginning of the year in anticipation for science coming up as a priority in areas of growth. So I am very curious about what are some levers we can, as far as high impact instructional strategies to better support economically disadvantaged students. I'm also with students with disabilities. That's another cohort that you'll see our line is at a negative slope, and we want to move that to a positive slope. So those were two areas I would drill down on.
And thinking about how coherent and consistent is the instructional experience across classrooms, where there can be concentration of different groups of students, right? Is there a different instructional approach, not necessarily curriculum, because we do have consistent curricular materials, but how concepts are being presented and the learning tasks within that curriculum are being presented to students. How consistent is that across classrooms, right? Is the level of cognitive demand equal? Are we engaging students in deep thinking on a conceptual level across our classrooms? Or is there a difference in that?
Yeah, I just want to name you around 5 minutes. Just to follow up on what you said, Glenn. So I know at the elementary level, there is consistent curriculum. I'm curious, at the middle school level, what is the science curriculum? Is it shared across the middle schools? And then with science at the high school, is there consistent curriculum? Like if my kid is in bio and another kid is in bio in a different classroom, are they having shared materials? And is that also true for chemistry, physics, etc.? So let's start with middle school and then move into high school. I asked too many questions at once.
So can I
Yeah,
start with
yeah.
this? So Lynn mentioned that in 2017, 2018, we had an instructional approach for science to support the rollout of the next generation science standards. So I've used and shown resources before from Jen Wilkie, who was in that role, that work. And then Lynn also mentions Anderson, who really supported the secondary next generation rollout and the shifts in standards. So that's some of the other documents that are linked for your review. So right now, what middle schools are doing by department is they're looking at what are our standards that we're going to focus on. How are we going to pace out so all students get experiences that are teaching to those standards. And it's similar to what the standards are the curriculum. It's not a purchased curriculum, to answer your question. That is not what they're using. Similar to literacy is not at middle school is not a purchased curriculum. And then at the high school level, the regents. So the biology teachers teaching biology would be in the same professional learning community. They're going to be looking at ordering supplies for science experiments and collaborating with their department on how they're using the resources to support the standards that we want students to have access to. So there isn't a biology regents or biology or a living environment curriculum we buy at this time.
And is it shared materials between teachers? Like you described shared planning, like are the teachers, like are the grading expectations, tests, lesson materials or things.
Right. So for example, if I wanted to talk about middle school science for a minute because they're norming right now around common assessments and grading. And so what on a scale, the standards assessment, what does a 1 look like, a 2, a 3, and a 4? And that's getting back to the use of professional learning communities, looking at student work and assessment and having conversations about instruction, which is actually what some of you saw when we went to do it that day, pushing into literacy. Although there's not a shared a curriculum that we're buying, there's shared experiences for students and teachers looking at that work they're doing and looking at, okay, where do we see success? How do we want to shift our craft of teaching?
Emily, I feel like you were gonna say it.
No, I think, I think the fact that there isn't a shared curriculum means that, there is opportunity for sharing of lesson planning and of strategies and everything else, but that is an intentional approach, right? To not have a shared curriculum, and therefore teachers do have the opportunity to teach very differently as long as they're all like aligning their teaching with the standards. So I guess I was just saying, no, like I know, you know, I know that like in high school, there are certainly like a bio course in ninth grade, for example, as long as there are like a multitude of ways that you can teach those standards. And I know that like some teachers choose to like basically like follow the textbook that they're using and choose to like go on each one of those like areas with which they're teaching. Others will do different things. So I do think that it's an intentional choice here, right? To not do that and to give teachers the kind of freedom to creatively teach the way that they choose, as long as they are meeting,
As long as it's aligned to New York City standards, culturally responsive.
right?
And
Which
Just
means that the variability can be significant.
cognizant of time, I know we need to go to the next thing. I know that personally, I'm just like thinking about the research around coherence and how learning is difficult. I will name I'm struggling with the idea that I think there's opportunities like Emily presented, and those opportunities at the best lead to like strong experiences for students, and at the worst lead to inequities like the ones that we see in the science data. So I personally see a connection when we don't have a set experience, like a set curriculum or like an instructional strategies for what students are getting from it. But that is neither here nor there. That's just
Well, it's
my
really
notice.
important because I want to mean that we do have a curriculum for elementary that we'll be evaluating, and we do have instructional strategies. So I would add to your comment that the inequities that we see in our data that are mirrored by state and national data are definitely something to address. I don't think having an adopted curriculum at the secondary level in and of itself addresses that. And I think what I would want to get curious about in this data is across New York State, when you look at all of the schools, are they using a curriculum for the biology regions? We're outpacing them right now. So are they having teachers create that aligned to the standards, or are they using something canned? Because we could use that, and the quality and the implementation of it depends on so many factors: professional development, the use of peer observation, the use of timely feedback. And those are all factors whenever we adopt any curriculum. So I just want to be really thoughtful with when we are using curriculum, it's in collaboration with teachers, we're getting their input, and we're building out a system that is engineered for success for the most vulnerable students that, we're not yet
And I think it's important to call out at the secondary level, just the level of expertise of teachers too. There are 4 certification areas for science teachers at the high school level, middle school and high school level versus generalists at the elementary level, right? So when we're talking about our teachers of chemistry, those are highly trained teachers of that subject area, right? That bring a wealth of expertise that can lead to better instructional and curricular decisions.
Yeah, my wondering is
Yeah.
not, it's not the second guessing, you need on expertise, it's
Yeah.
mainly a question of a function of time. Of time and resources and how are we best like getting a consistent experience for students and what is
Yeah.
the best way to get there, but
Yeah.
again,
Absolutely.
going back,
Absolutely. Yeah.
going back to science, going back to instructional minutes. I'd love for us to go into that.
Oh,
Sure.
Can I have a question?
Yeah.
Wait, first, I'm sorry, I know I came late, but I was looking this over earlier, so I would like to ask a question and also say. When I was looking at these stats, and like I said, I missed the first 15 minutes, I was just like floored about how great we're doing. Especially when, like, literally just this weekend, someone from Lansing was asking me, well, Ithaca, your test scores. And I'm just sitting there thinking, where do you get that? And then here we are. And like, this is, yeah, okay, some of them have a downward trend, but this is something to be proud of. And I just want to point that out. And it just made me very happy. And this is just 1 year. And so, yeah, there's ups and downs, but like on a state level, like we're doing really well. And then I guess my question is, I'm a little confused by Jacob's question because is there any evidence that this is tied to different differentiation in curriculum? Like any sort of drops or issues? Like I'm just confused as to where that question is because it just seems like perhaps some of this is working. Like what's the correlation here to that being a question when we're talking about this with teacher autonomy and curriculum differentiation and test scores? Like, is there any evidence that causes problems?
There's,
I'm asking Mary.
Quiet, okay, I can speak after, because it was about my question.
Yes, I'm happy to share my professional thinking and then have Jacob share. So, we were just discussing the new teacher project and the opportunity myth report. And right now, I'm really inspired. I'm doing a lot of reading on maintaining the high cognitive load for students. So as a teacher, how am I setting a trend for students to be leaders of their own learning, which we do with science inquiry approach, and as well as it's really well intentioned sometimes to try to explain things more in an effort to provide clarity or review things. But when we do that with a finite amount of time for students, we actually are lowering the cognitive load. And a curriculum in and of itself doesn't fix that because it's more complicated than rocket science. You are a teacher with 20 different learners in front of you making decisions about what you're going to continue with and getting that feedback loop from students. So I would say the instructional practice, the pedagogy is where I would want to prioritize. And when I look at this data, that's my next step. That's what I would prioritize that would be beneficial across all content areas.
We do similar readings, so I'm gonna yes to pedagogical consistency. My question wasn't about this data, but rather like there is substantive research that implementing curriculum is like one of the top ways to improve student achievement and to bridge gaps between students who historically do well and students who don't. So that's where I'm coming from with it and like building on the work from elementary. That said, I agree 100%, curriculum does not solve the problem, But I think that there's a lot of structures in place in terms of collaboration with the ITA, your observations, professional development, that would put it in a better position than other districts that have haphazardly put together curriculum in a way that is not in collaboration with teachers. So that's my intention with the function.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, I know regionally, at the secondary level in our region, in TST BOCES, there is, at the secondary level, middle school to high school, every district is using the standards to guide what the teachers design. And that's, so I can't speak to the whole state. I just know for our region.
We're looking at we're student focused.
Yes, yeah.
So it's not like, is there much research out there that is student focused? That really looks at students?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's a lot of us take, or some of us take a lot of joy in looking at that.
For Jake, I just want to be cognizant at the time for the
Yeah,
item. at the
I
end.
get it. School-wide scheduling. I got it.
Let's take around 15 minutes to talk about scheduling. I'm hoping that we can really zero in on the teaching of science. And like the time for science as a first. Oh, I mean,
Well, school wide schedule.
yes, please.
Thank you so much, Emily. Yes.
I thought you were directing.
She's eating it up and then it's like a driver's ed car. She's got her foot on the brake. All right, so the school-wide scheduling. There we go. All right, so just to give a overview, was it 2 years ago? Yeah, two years ago. We started, Lynn and I came into these roles and wanted to look across all 8 elementary schools to just build consistency across the schedules. And so in partnership with elementary leadership, both the principals and the associate principals of inclusion, we did a scheduling workshop for leaders. So some of these documents are revealing where we found inconsistencies and we had to norm around. Science and social studies wasn't one of those places where there was inconsistency. Schools all set aside time to do that. But there were different inconsistencies around literacy blocks, lunch and recess, the time allotted for math instruction, and then the structures for intervention. So that's why the next document gives these locally developed norms and regulations for the schedule. So you're not going to see, Jacob, to your question, science and social studies. So we were normed around that, with that. When I first started working in our district, it was called core. And now it just says science or social studies. Do you want to add anything else? All right, so this is a quick overview of it. And I think I put on, Lynn actually shared, thank you, Lynn, these sample schedules. Really small font, sorry about that, sir.
Is it possible to make this like full screen or stuff? Or control?
Yeah.
It's also in-
Okay, sure.
Yeah, or just like in general.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just gonna think of it.
I can also go to the 3,500 fields that
I got her.
But by the way, with the sample schedules, hypothetically proposed schedules or like a sampling of schedules that are actually happening in classrooms.
It's a mixture of both.
Okay.
Yes.
I was just curious.
Yeah. And it was really more about to provide examples of how it could actually all fit within our instructional day.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
So with the schedule, like in K2, can you clarify that I see in each one for the science and social studies, there's sort of a 25 or 30-minute block that says science, social studies, play. How does that actually manifest itself?
Oh, that's a good question. So one, it depends on where the module, so if you look at, for example, EL was chosen with intention because one of the things that brought it to the top was its intersection with science and social studies. So there might be something that starts in a module that you're going to continue that's related to a science standard that you want to cover. And so having that flexibility for that continuation of the conversation on science. And the same goes with social studies, like for example, magnetic reading, there's a lot of overlap between an intersection between social studies standards and literacy standards. So a teacher is going to make that judgment based on what modules they're doing. And then you also have play there, because that is something that has risen and surfaced, especially among the early childhood educators and advocacy on science exploration through play. And how are we doing inquiry walks, for example? I was just sitting with a had a wonderful conversation with a longtime retired teacher who authored the book, Lori Rubin, who authored the book To Look Closely. And her way of teaching science was an integrated model of observation through play. And I was reminded of that in our meeting the other day. So that is, Jacob, how that's coming through. I want to note that there aren't transitions designated. So when we're looking for this upcoming school year, like that's one piece of feedback I've gotten from a couple of teachers. In general, transitions don't count towards the New York State minute count. So when we're trying to move minutes, thinking about when we're writing transitions and what that looks like. That's important, but I just want to own that you don't see transitions like, snow pants season is a real thing for lunch and recess, and we know that, but it's right.
So is there? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So no, you can actually go ahead.
It's just a quote. So where I always think internally, with extreme possibilities, right? So what is the based on this? What is the minimum amount of science study by that a student in any given classroom might receive versus the max? Like, is it possible? Like, because I would assume the intention of this is not to say there could be a classroom where a student gets all play during that 30 minutes and never science, nor would we want all science and no play. So
I think these recommendations go in concert with our curriculum maps that spell out what are the priority science learning standards for each part of the year at the elementary level and social studies, and that we're kind of alternating between subject areas of a unit of study around science, around one of those priority learning areas, and then social studies, and that the play is really in service of that, right? Like, how are we designing our make-believe center, right? As kids are exploring economic needs and wants and making it a little store, right? So how is that play in support of the learning? Yeah. So I guess we would not expect any place to just be only play or only science or only social studies.
and I'd love, sorry, Catherine, again, just from your perspective, like within the sample schedule, is there time? Or, because if we're talking about a science adoption process, right, there's piloting, is there a time, like, does the schedule allow for the teaching of science in K through 5?
I don't have a great, comprehensive answer for that. I think that the day moves fast, no matter what we're doing. Transitions are a real thing, and that a schedule that doesn't have transitions built into it is not going to hear a representation of what a student's day looks like or what a teacher's day looks like. And if you wait, I'm sure that some of my young early childhood educators who are on my group chat will have a better answer to that 5 minutes. So.
It's the sort of wondering I have for a listening circle, right? It's this falls into the category of the sort of obstacle that could derail the adopt, like a focus on teaching on science. So I'm just really curious.
I think there are very few elementary educators in this district that I think that would argue that more time wouldn't be helpful, right? Instructional time. We have a very, very short instructional day at the elementary level that requires intentional choices about where we emphasize.
Can I wonder, when I look at this and then I think about just anecdotally what I've heard from teachers. Is that, you know, some schools can finish an entire math curriculum and other schools don't. And like, there's like entire books that aren't gotten to. You know, do we know, like, the cultures are different at every school, you know, do we think that this is gonna help? Or do we know the root of that, why some schools are able to get through things and?
So that, when we see that, that's typically in the first 2 years of adopting a curriculum because pacing is off. So for example, Adam, I'm gonna point to you because we went to see really great reading and that, for example, is designed to be a 15 to 20-minute endeavor. It was taking about an hour. So there was frustration in the first year that weren't getting through the content, but that was the learning curve of the curriculum. And so we did see and had evidence of the math pacing not being what we had hoped it to be in the first year with Eureka Math Squared. And so being super intentional with the math strategists and had Nicholas leading workshops on pacing of the lessons to get through all of the modules. So it's a really good question. Surfaces and reality of the field of teaching, you know.
I guess I just have a question. I don't really have a philosophy about it, but more of a question about the win time. And I mean, yeah, I just have different feelings about it. I mean, on one hand, I think it's really great to have a block of time where students can work on the things that they need. Alternative hypothesis. Win time didn't exist, and that time was divided up among more core subject areas. I just wonder about that. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's what I think should happen, but I wonder what would happen because that'd be another 30 minutes. You know, how might that help? And I think dovetailing with actually what Erin was asking, I like her question and I've asked a similar question. Two, you know, are we getting through the standards that we need to get through every year?
Yeah.
And how would having another 30 minutes a day taken away from win time and redirected toward other areas change that? And then again, going back to the original thing, or do we just really need that extra time because that's what's best for student learning? I don't know the answer.
Well, I think something really critical about win time and like thinking about we have a really diverse population of students, right? And some students learn something with 1 or 2 exposures. Other students need 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, you know,
Yes.
really exposures to the same learning. And when we don't have a dedicated win time for providing that reteaching and additional practice to students with intention, what happens is those students get pulled out of instruction from other areas. So they end up missing social studies or science or being pulled out of the reading block to go get that additional learning, which actually increases the learning gap, right? So by saying we are holding safe this 30 minutes for that really important and necessary reteaching and support for learners, where they're not going to miss new learning and get further behind from their peers, while working on making sure that we have important and meaningful work for all students at that time.
Right.
But I think that's where we get in trouble when we don't have a win time. We pull kids from learning.
It feels like it depends. Like it just depends on a particular. Some students might be like, "Oh God, I really need that time." Other students might be like, "Oh, I finished all my work. I'm just kind of reading a book."
Yeah.
You know, I just don't.
And I guess the win time is not about so much about finishing of work. It really is direct instruction for kids. For most students, it's additional direct instruction for kids in standard skills, things that they need additional either teaching or practice on to meet grade level standards.
So that time must be very important then. I'm thinking back to like the science where you looked at the decline. Like that time is critical for those students who really kind of need that extra instruction to
Correct.
reteach.
Because when we offer additional support and it's not integrated or there's not a time and place for it in the schedule, students miss first instruction. Because we're not gonna pull students from lunch and recess and we don't pull students from specials. So, and again, it's an engineering problem. So similar to that we need to address transitions in a thoughtful way this upcoming year, I would say the need for a block of time dedicated to it in the calendar was something that we identified as a structure to build to support closing the gap.
And does this help, like I think about, you know, all the factors we've talked about over the years with chronic absenteeism, chronic tardiness, like this, I imagine that also helps those students who are falling behind because they're so often missing the beginning of the day. Is that like, I mean, because we've been thinking creatively for several years now, how to support those students who fall into those categories, like how do we help fix these issues? Like, is this schedule, like with the wing time, kind of addressing some of those things as well?
Yes, although I don't think that was at the center of our intent, that would be an additional benefit to it. For people watching, win time is what I need time. So I want to actually say that because it's a newer acronym that all of you know, but I don't know if that's a common understanding of what they expect it to be.
I think we might need to do last thoughts from Catherine, because then I know we have the.
Yes,
presentation.
so I've got a group of elementary educators in my chat who say that, you know, vary between is there enough time versus do we work really hard to fit it in? Yeah, but more time would be better. The point about students with IEPs missing social studies or science because they're receiving IEP services at that time. But the most notable thing that hasn't come out in this conversation yet is the teachers here who have worked here long enough to have worked here prior to the implementation of EL and really great reading, noted that before we adopted those curricula, we were using in-house design project-based learning and anti-marginalization models that were designed specifically to do double duty of ELA and science simultaneously. So there was less instructional choice needed to be made because it was already built in. And what they're saying is that the new curricula don't offer as many opportunities for flexibility to prioritize science and social studies. That it's there, but not in the same way and not as supportive of doing integrated teaching of the two. And thank you to my folks at home, you know who you are.
Folks at home.
Yeah.
I don't think we're gonna arrive at like after the meeting, right? I know we will like send an email, we'll talk about agenda setting like regarding science. There's clearly more to talk about, but I also appreciate like we have a little bit more context than going into what you propose for the instructional blocks, the listening circle, Uber dates. That was so thank you so much. So I'd now love to call up Samantha and your, I guess, the one special guest, but Yay.
Yes, room, we got another chair. So speak.
So the context here, we were talking about literacy, adoption, pedagogical strategies generally. We'd love to hear from you. We had a chance to review your PowerPoint, but if you want to touch through any of it, and I imagine we might have some questions, or they just close in around 16 minutes so that we give time for other folks to settle in for the work. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and we're just I don't know, Chris, do you want to just introduce?
I'm Chris Farley. I'm a teacher leader at Beverly J. Martin this year.
Great, let's get started. All right. Do you want to give an overview?
Sure, yes. So for EL, our new literacy curriculum at K2, we've had year-long professional development actually starting last June, where all teachers were engaged in a kind of introductory experience to the curriculum. And then we had a coach from EL that works in buildings several times throughout the fall. Feedback from teachers from that initial work was that the coaching wasn't providing quite what they were looking for. They really were looking for models of lessons being in action that they could watch and kind of see the pacing and see how it works with this. They didn't feel like they were getting that. And that there was some inconsistency between the messages being shared by the EL presenters at PD and perhaps what they were hearing from leaders like their principals and Mia Mary around fidelity versus integrity to the like, what are we expected to do? Are we supposed to read it word for word? In response to that, you'll see on the next slide, we just recently did a round of learning labs, which happened at Beverly J. Martin Elementary, with some very brave teachers who offered to open their classrooms up to their colleagues throughout the district. What this looked like, we had a day for kindergarten, one for first, one for second. A teacher at BJM co-planned the lesson of the day with the EL coach and their colleagues throughout the district listening in on that planning session. We went in, watched that lesson be taught with the teacher, BJM teacher, and the EL coach kind of tag teaming throughout. And then we went back and debriefed them. And it was amazing. It was amazing. Teachers said, this is exactly what I was looking for. I don't know, a second grade teacher actually flapped her fake wings about freedom from like the burden she was feeling from EL. So it was a really positive professional development experience. It's true. It was funny and but real.
So a couple of appreciations, definitely Beverly J. Martin and the teachers who were brave enough to teach in front of their kids. You know, that does take that's a vulnerable spot to be in, to have people watch you teach that aren't small children. You know, and hosting, so just the host school, but then also EL for their flexibility in hearing us, because when, you know, asked for feedback from educators, they gave it. And it was a real delight to watch you share that with the EL. So we have an EL strategic planning group comprised of a principal and Lynn and myself to get to just talk about what is needed to move the work forward. And this isn't a standard thing that they offer. So this was designed based on our teachers' feedback. So I'll pass to the team with Beverly J. Martin to talk about your experience and perspective.
So, I mean, we're just super grateful for this opportunity and just the way that it's been rolled out. I think it's been done with quite intentional, and it's been an opportunity for the building leaders, in addition to the teachers, to have some insight and training, but then also for us to come together. So it's such a gift to have Chris in the building, because I feel like oftentimes as building leaders, we're like, okay, here's what we're doing. We'll support you, now figure it out. And I feel like this process really showed us how we can do some things differently and really do a little bit more coaching. And it's like, I do, we do, you do, versus just I share, you do. So we're excited about that. And I think really this is an opportunity for staff and scholars to be leaders of their own learning. While we do have curricula, the ability to be flexible in that, but still be held to standards and accountability, but to really allow what is created in the moment to drive it versus, you know, what we heard before, we had like these case studies. This is much more designed around, you're going to present, you're going to have opportunities for scholars to do reading, writing, science, social studies. It really is interdisciplinary. And I think that's what some of our newer teachers are finding. When we talk about literacy, we're not just talking about ELA. we're talking about literacy throughout and how that connects and the threads that are made there. So it also has provided us some vertical alignment K through 2, which I have not seen us do well before in the district. I will just say that's just my own personal experience. So I'm super excited about that. And then also just the district-wide collaboration and breaking down those silos. I think we've also done a really nice job of getting grade level teams together through our math work with CAT in other contexts. So this just provides us another opportunity to do it. And especially with some of our youngest learners. And while we have pre-K using really great reading, we're also having those discussions with them around this, because I think that's a missing piece in where we need to do better as a district is even though pre-K has their own curriculum, they're coming to us and we're really working hard to try to build those bridge those gaps. And I think because there is play and there's flexibility and there's exploration and there's field trips and all of that, it aligns more with pre-K and they can kind of see that trajectory.
I was in a co-planning meeting today and teachers were sharing the ability to do integration with the art teacher. Aligned with the EL curriculum and having the art teacher being able to come in and provide that experience. The EL connected around art in their community. Also part of the EL curriculum was around sound and having the music teacher come in and be able to be part of that. Just shared at a full planning meeting today.
I want to say hi to Ms. Klein and thank you for coming.
Special guest.
Yeah. And again, it's awesome to have the principal perspective, and I know that that's what you want, but it's also so important to hear from the people that are actually doing it day in and day out. So I just asked Chris and Brianna to come. So I don't know if you.
And Brianna was one of the
Yes,
breaks.
yeah, so if you wanna, you know, just
to.
I don't know how much you heard or didn't hear, but.
No, sorry, I just
Okay.
popped in.
Yeah.
No, I had the opportunity to welcome not only the EL coach, but other second grade teachers from the district into my classroom to work with her to look at a lesson and like do a really deep dive and then like actually co-teach a lesson with her in the space. And it was just such a wonderful experience to like hear what other insights she could share with us. I think a lot of us had so many sighs of relief being like, oh my gosh, okay, wait, that's really what we can do and what we should be doing. And like, I think a lot of us felt like we needed to be in this box. And she was like, no, it's okay. Like open it, and do what's best for the students. And just having that coaching experience like in real time that she like came up to me, she was like, hey, don't forget this next part. And I was like, oh yes, okay, perfect. And she also gave me that that extra push as a new teacher to be like, it's okay to let the kids do this and struggle through it and then support them versus me being like, I'm gonna hold their hand the whole time, like it's gonna be okay. So they did a really great job and it was just such an amazing experience. And then to talk to her about it afterwards and have that reflection and also collaborating with the people outside of BJM, because talking to them about their experience and what they have done differently, I was like, oh, what, like so many great things. Like I'm so grateful for that experience. I really am. Thank you. Yeah.
Any questions or comments?
First, I just want to say it's so cool that just like looking at this row of like teacher, coach, and like assistant principal, and like district administrators and teacher. I think that like when curriculum adoption fails, it's usually because there's a disconnect with one or more people in the position at this table. And it's just like a really excellent example of like what I heard a month or two ago, which was like these EL coaches are not, it's like we are not getting what we need, and then like the fact that you all advocated and worked together, like early in your career, I wouldn't volunteer to do that anyway. I just think this is a really good example, like the power of like when there is a coherent, consistent approach. I'm just really glad that you all are working on this.
It sounds like it's been so effective that my question is like how this informs like the adoption of the next curricula or even continued work on this and other new, relatively new curricula. And part of my question is just in general, wanting to understand kind of how it will inform the future, but also I'm curious, to me, I'm like, man, I wish if only this had been like a year ago, having spoken to so many teachers who have really been struggling with EL and especially like knowing that, I feel like one of the things that I keep hearing is that they're very long sometimes. And so you get the stress of like, how do I fit it all into one lesson? But I'm curious from you specifically, like, do you think that you needed to kind of go through that and kind of battling through it yourself before this was like worthy? Or is it like, man, we should have had this kind of opportunity a year ago?
I think I would have, I appreciated going through the journey. I think it made the experience that much more valuable because I was like, this is how I was doing it. This is what I was doing to the best of my ability. And then she came in and coached me and was like, okay, but this is really what you're supposed to be getting to. This is the main, and the last few times I've been teaching the lesson, I was like, this is my goal. This is what I want to do. And like, I felt like I've been able to get my kids through the lesson to be like, this is my end goal. This is our class end goal. I'm not going to get stuck on this part because that's what the book is saying. Like, this is where we need to be. And that more so taking away from it has also helped me feel like I'm now getting back to pace and being like, okay, now next thing. So it's moving along much better.
Yeah, thank you. That's really helpful. And before I'm going to interrupt you even answering my question to ask one other piece, which is, I guess I'm just stating that this is why Mary always say like year zero, right? So to give that time, maybe I'm saying year wrong, but like to give that time of kind of muddling through before trying to really implement a lot of PD. And so also my question is,
Well,
no,
I want to, like, year zero is a hard, like, there is a term that's used, it's a hard term for me because people are working really hard in year zero. So I'm always, I think in the launch, why sometimes it's okay for there to be differentiation in how people are implementing it because you do get, that's also innovation time.
right, yeah.
Right, so like innovation year, and it's not that we want to withhold PD, but this curriculum is a thinking curriculum.
Yeah.
It requires teachers who have studied the craft of teaching and learning, gotten a degree in it. And that's the assumption that they're holding this book. Yeah, and Chris, you don't need to raise your hand.
Oh my goodness. I've taught in the district a long time and have gone through a lot of curriculum adoption. And I also think that this lab style that we were afforded the opportunity to do is particularly valuable for newer teachers. Because they don't have the tool belt that I have developed over the 20 years that I've been doing this. 40 years, 100 years, however long it's been. And so it really is, valuable to think about curriculum in a way that it's different for Brianna to do it the first year than it would be for me as a master teacher.
Yeah.
To do it. And so I think that the professional development that we bring in, really looked at that because I saw teachers that have been teaching in the district for a long time also have some aha moments through this lab professional development model.
Yeah, that makes, so the second part of my question, EL seems to have, whether it's, flawed or not, having these coaches is a really cool thing. And it doesn't sound like they've been super effective the whole time before this. And I know that you have these teams or a team, I'm not quite sure how it works, of people who are kind of meeting to reflect on, and think about exactly these things about what we're doing. So I guess my question is this a model? Do we need those EL coaches in general, or is that kind of the model that you're going for in using these?
Well, we need them
teams
right now, but we
Right.
won't need them forever. Like, go on, Chris Barley and Brianna.
Okay, so the one that didn't offer that is this, it's the model you're using, it's an effective one to do this.
So I believe in coaching teams because the model that I got early in my teaching career on one-on-one mentor, or let me pause. The model I got early on was a team mentoring model. I was hired into the team. I was the first hire they had in 15 years. So I was standing on the shoulders of people who had taught for 2 decades, growing me.
Yeah.
And we need to be realistic about the demographics of the field of teaching right now. And so when we're looking at a team, the experience in that team, having one-to-one conversations isn't going to move us as quickly as a team conversation. So I don't know if I answered your
No,
question.
sure,
but
I
said
said
what I wanted
it
to
seems
say.
like you have a really good, like, I really like the model and the
Yeah.
idea that there is so much like reflection and to be able to speak to teachers who are kind of a part of that more leadership cohort of this.
Yeah.
Seems like a really good way to implement this kind of model, even with curricula that don't have a coach.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like, or if not, I believe there's benefit in having the EL coach come who is really well versed. She's seen hundreds of school districts go through this cycle. So, and myself wanting to know, like, but tell us what to do in the beginning. She said, well, first we're gonna do some walkthroughs. And when we did walkthroughs, that was to guide us in reflecting on what we were seeing in the teaching and learning and help us before we decide what we're gonna do, let's identify what the need is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that makes
that
sense.
was helpful.
And before I, like, the only, I think, back to your question earlier, Erin, I think that this is one of the things that speaks to in general and not advocating for or against curricula, like, off the shelf curricula, but I think that hearing about like the difference of having like a very established teacher versus a very new teacher, it's curricula has a role to play and can play, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like can play a really positive role for new teachers, even if it's not an expectation of following the curricula, A through Z, but to have something that's a little bit of a guide and something to be able to look at and lean on until you have the confidence to really be able to sit there and just be like, I can look at these standards and I feel totally confident being able to develop an entire year's worth of instructional material based off of that. So it does seem like there's kind of a role for both, even if the philosophy is to generally like not be forcing teachers to like sit down with a, off the shelf curricula and teach exactly to that. Is that right?
It is 6 o'clock, so I know the other meeting's supposed to be starting right now. I just want to say again, thank you so much. I know Emily's captured notes. I will send an email just like to ask if there's any like follow-up on requested agenda items. And then meanwhile, have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
And come see it, like, that's the other piece, we can talk about it, but you need to feel it and see it, it's just, you will, it's magic.
Feel it and see it.
Yes.
There you go.